Welcome to the Tuned In Podcast with your hosts Rachel Grundon and Nick Reeder, where we discuss all things metaphysical and topics to empower you to become the very best version of yourself. Thank you for joining us, and let us begin on your path to healing.
Everyone for being here to have this really important conversation about such an important topic that many of us don't realize is such an issue, and how we're on a daily basis not fully aware of what it is that the impact that we're having on our home environment. Myself being part of this really important ecological biogeographical area of the Susquehanna River. And I guess we're considered part of the lower Susquehanna River here. And my family actually owns property, a golf course up near the Sunbury area. And I've been traveling there a couple times this past year. And I just am so breathtakingly in awe whenever I cross that dam near Sunbury. The bridge. And is there a dam there too, right? Right there.
It's a wide part of the river with a lot of water flow.
So beautiful. But then, I was connecting a little bit with the Lower Susquehanna Riverkeepers last year, and that was the first time I'd really started to engage with you guys. And then becoming aware a little bit of the work that you're doing, the really important work. And I'm by happenstance passing through Sunbury recently, seeing their or I guess that would be the middle Susquehanna River keeper, correct? So
yeah, they're super active. They're definitely some people that we look up to.
And I felt this connection on a personal level that God is kind of using my daily grind to make me a little bit more and more aware or connected to the river and the keepers of the river, and that there is even such a thing. And I'll open up saying thank you to Ted Evgeniadis.
Evgeniadis.
I knew I was going to
really
butcher it. I'm sorry.
That was really close.
Evgeniadis. Yeah.
Hey, man.
I was looking at your Facebook earlier this week. How do I pronounce this? And thankfully you have the pronunciation there a little bit, but I didn't understand the particular nuances of it. So Ted, you are considered the actual lower Susquehanna Riverkeeper, correct?
That's it. That's the title.
And Elena Consaguera, you are considered a river protector, LSRA protector.
It's Consagra. Consagra.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys.
No, hon, it's all right. How about these Mediterranean names, though? I actually have been always really interested in finding a way to consider water quality as a priority in our communities. And I would always for instance, I would always drive through Wormleysburg, where you can see Harrisburg from across the river. It's a beautiful view. And it sucks when people are trashy, and I'm well, how hard would it be to do something like street sweeping for Wormleysburg? And so that was kind of what started me feeling really passionate about it, such a simple, intuitive solution. So the Riverkeeper Association first came into my awareness when I wasn't even in Pennsylvania. I was in Georgia, and they have a Riverkeeper Association for the Black Warrior River. So then 10 years later, I joined the board when Ted became the Riverkeeper and executive director of the Lower Susquehanna Riverkeeper. So what was that, 7 years ago, I think. And we established our board and bylaws and went through some turnover and really stabilized the board of directors over these years. It's been great.
That's amazing. And one of the biggest things that really impacted me about the awareness around such the issue we're going to talk about tonight with the river was a session that you and I were having a couple years ago, Elena, and somehow we got onto some spiritual conversation around a woman and her connection to the earth and her rhythms. And then all of a sudden the river was brought into it in our conversation. And you started to mention in that part of the conversation how important the health of the local river here with the Susquehanna River being a really endangered river in America. And I had no idea. I'm bringing this up because this is what I think the crux of this whole conversation is really going to be fruitful for tonight, is those of us around here, and I think I speak for like a larger number of citizens in this area, is that like we're aware that there's like environmental crises all the time around the world, but we don't actually realize like what is going on in our own hometown. And so many of us can feel and see the world being torn apart one brick at a time right now, and we feel like we are helpless in many ways to fix it. And it's such a large problem that if we, have a way to go about trying to be part of the solution, many of us would want to be doing that. But there's like an overwhelm. I can speak from my own perspective over the years, coming to now at this point where I'm becoming way more active in taking steps in the right direction to be whatever large or small part of the solution I can be. And what I really appreciated about researching the lower Susquehanna Riverkeeper more, and a little bit now understanding that there's even Riverkeepers in Georgia and up in Sunbury, I see is that there are places for the average person like myself to plug into, to find, or at least fuel, to be a small part if need be, if that's all that we can be, a small part in like a larger mission that is already active and underway that many of us aren't even aware of. And so this conversation tonight is to help those of us that don't know about the issues to become aware of the issues, and then bringing you guys to light, and any other plugs that you could put in here for this, in this conversation, the correct people to plug into that aren't you or that work with you. So welcome, Elena and Ted. Thank you for helping me get here today, Elena, and Ted, thank you for being here today. Every talk that you give over the years, every appearance that you make, it's crucial in just making one more person aware so that they can then spread the word. And I'll just say this, that I've had a number of people in conversation with me over the past couple of days, knowing that I'm going to be doing this with you guys. And I'll just mention the brief little issues that I know about how in 2005, our river was named, I think, the most endangered river. The Susquehanna River was named the most endangered river in the United States. And I can't remember the agency that said that. I think it was the rivers. You guys probably know the River Association.
American Rivers, yeah.
Yeah. And so that's like a really alarming statistic for a person like myself to be introduced to. And that was 2005, but I only became aware of that this past year. And so I feel like now is like a really good time for me to ask Ted to start speaking on whatever feels like needs to come up, is how and why have we gotten here, and how can we correct the process? For us, sorry.
I got to take everyone back to a place that I don't believe any of us were alive for, right? So we got to go back to the 1960s, and to tell the story about Waterkeepers and about Waterkeeper Alliance and who we are today, you got to go back and you got to take a look at how this all started. So, the Hudson River was it was a river that was known throughout this country to be polluted. It was made fun of. It was just chastised as such a polluted river. And the people that were fishing that river and shellfish harvesting and all that, that pollution was interfering with their livelihoods because they weren't finding in as many fish. There was fish kills all the time by, coal-fired power plants. And the pollution was devastating to the aquatic life that lived in the Hudson. And so those people, those anglers, those captains, they banded together and they started collecting data and evidence. You had wastewater treatment plants that were just dumping raw sewage right into the river. You had coal-fired power plants that were putting out such thermal pollution, it was causing fish kills every other day. You had oil and gas and rail yards that were just dumping oil and other toxics right into the river. So, after collecting some data and evidence, that group of folks, they formed the Hudson River Fishermen's Association. They took polluters to court. There was one law in the books in the 60s. It was the Rivers and Harbors Act, and it had a statute provision in it that allowed citizens to essentially take a polluter to court and, you know, show that this polluter was damaging the environment. And that's what they started to do. And they also started collecting bounties because they were successful. And with those bounties, they got more equipment, they bought a boat, and, you know, fast forwarding years later, they formed the Hudson Riverkeeper. And that model of having, you know, an advocate to be the voice and to be the watchdog became very attractive to other places all around the country. So from the Hudson Riverkeeper, you had other groups that formed, you know, right thereafter. You had the Delaware Riverkeeper, you had the San Francisco Baykeeper, and you had others that joined and followed the model. And so today, fast forwarding, in the late 90s, Waterkeeper Alliance was formed to essentially license waterkeepers. And in that time, it was in the US. Now we have waterkeepers all around the world. So there's over 320 or so waterkeepers protecting over 2.6 or 2.8 million square miles of water on 6 continents. And it's amazing because, you know, back in the 1970s, we had a national environmental emergency. You know, we had rivers that were on fire, right? They were burning. And, you know, it wasn't once or twice, it was multiple times. We had a legislature and a Congress in the 1970s that saw that and said, we need to say this is a national emergency. And that's what they did. And they formed the Clean Water Act. So the Clean Water Act is so super important and vital to any single conversation you can have about water quality, because we are one of the very few countries or nations in the world that has such a set of laws in place that protects our right to clean water. You know, other countries like China, there are water keepers in China, and they have a very difficult time doing their job because a lot of laws aren't in place. You know, so circling back to what we have here in the lower Susquehanna, we have a very large territory. We have 8,500 square miles of jurisdiction that we monitor and patrol for pollution. So from Sealands Grove, where Penns Creek comes into the river, all the way down to the Chesapeake Bay at Haverday Grace, including the Juniata watershed, is our area where we monitor and patrol. And, you know, there are a ton of issues. I mean, when you look up north, when you look up where you were talking about in Sunbury and into the West Branch and into the northern parts of our watershed, you know, we had a lot of activity in that area, especially mining, where now we have acid mine drainage. Acid mine drainage is, if not the largest contributor of pollution to any freshwater system that we have in the state of Pennsylvania. It's if not one of the largest, the biggest. You know, and acid mine drainage, it's really a formation of highly acidic water that's rich in heavy metals, and it's basically coming from subsurface, you know, sulfur-based minerals that are mixing with some kind of surface water, and you know it's creeping up all over the place, and it's difficult to manage. It's expensive. The mitigation is tough to do, but the state's working on it. But that is a huge source. We don't really have a lot of it down here where we're at in the lower Susquehanna. It is mainly you mainly find it up north. But coming down to our neck of the woods, you know, 2 of the largest sources of pollution that we see in the lower Susquehanna right now is agricultural runoff and stormwater. And then the big looming threat that we have above all of that is obviously climate change. I mean, climate change is driving many of these different things. You know, if we didn't have the climate that we're seeing right now, and the flash flooding events and the inches of rain that we're getting in matters of, an hour or two, stormwater issues wouldn't be so bad. Maybe runoff from farms wouldn't be so bad, but that's the overarching, threat here is climate change. But with that, you have the ag runoff and stormwater. Some of the issues that we're working on here are mainly a lot of point source driven, sources of pollution. You have non-point sources and you have point sources of pollution. Non-point sources aren't necessarily they're not covered by the Clean Water Act. So when we talk about agricultural runoff and how big of an issue it is, a lot of times it's because we don't have really explicit laws that say what you can and cannot do. Nor do we have a lot within our state where we're looking at, very extensive programs and protocols in place for best management practices and all of that, and making sure that that runoff isn't occurring on a farm. So that's the difficult part, is when you're dealing with non-point source. The point source pollution, which we're dealing with on all over the watershed, ranges from anywhere from coal ash contamination, combined sewer overflows. We're seeing those in Harrisburg, Lancaster City, hydroelectric dam relicensing. Right now we're working on the Conowingo Dam and relicensing there. Landfills, slaughterhouses and CAFOs, food processing plants, land use and development, diseases which affect fish. And obviously we've taken some action around endangered species and protecting endangered species. So we have a plethora of issues here. And if you want to dive into any of those issues I just mentioned, we can. But there's a ton we can talk about.
What does it mean for a river to become endangered? What does that mean for a river?
So, you have to look at everything from, a water body from its headwaters all the way down to where it's eventually draining out. Like for us, we have the river, which starts in New York. It starts in Cooperstown, New York at Lake Otsego, and it flows 444 miles down to the Chesapeake Bay. It is the longest river on the East Coast, and it's one of the oldest rivers in the entire world. So what's happened to our watershed? And when I say watershed, what happens to the 27,500 square miles of territory that we have where the Susquehanna River flows through? Because it's not just the Susquehanna River, it's also every single tributary and creek and little ditch that feeds it, right? So you have all these veins and these capillaries and veins that are feeding that main artery, being the river. How are those veins doing, right? How is the overall individual watersheds, what kind of contribution are they making to the Susquehanna as a whole? So you got to break it up in so many different sections to say, what's going on here and what's going on there. We know that in the southern part of our watershed, and specifically in Pennsylvania and New York and Lancaster counties, and a little bit further up, that's where we see a lot of the pollution contributions coming from, especially around agriculture. But there's many things that could dictate why a river would become threatened or endangered, and a lot of it can come through data. There is scientific data that the state has collected, that the federal agencies have collected over the years that might say that, hey, we have issues here. Mm-hmm. And I think the smoking gun, which led to that river being named as threatened and endangered, was the smallmouth bass. Smallmouth bass were exhibiting so many different visual representations of diseases, whether they're lesions or fungus or melanistic spots or tumors. Smallmouth bass are also known to have, and are still known to have, intersex characteristics, where the male bass were carrying eggs in their testes, which is a complete abnormality. Right. And so I think a lot of that evidence and a lot of that data went to suggest that, hey, we have a prized sport fish species where people are flocking from all over the world to come to the Susquehanna to fish, and these fish are dying, and they're sick because we had in 2004 into 2005 we had a huge fish kill of smallmouth bass, and since that time the population has slowly been it's been ebbing and flowing. Some years are better than others, but we know that there are a lot of contributors to those to making those fish sick, and researchers and scientists have said it's not just one thing, it's a combination, it's a cauldron of things that are causing this fish to get sick. Is it the fertilizers that are washing off the farm fields? Yep, you could check that box. Right. Is it the sludge and the human waste that's dumping out of our state capital? Yep, you can name that one. What about all the fertilizers and anything else that's running off our streets and winding up into our rivers, and the oils and the gases and whatever else that might be there? Does that have an effect? Yep, sure does. In California or in the state of Washington, they just saw that a residue or a chemical that's leaching, essentially rubbing itself off of tires. It's called 6-PPDQ. They found it and saw that specific chemical is causing fish to just not reproduce and to die off. So there are a ton of things that could give an idea of what's going on. But as far as the river being, endangered, I think one of the years, because it wasn't just once, this river's been named endangered multiple times. And I think one of the smoking guns for one of those years was the smallmouth bass and the issues that they were facing. But the state does, they go around the entire state, our state Department of Environmental Protection, and they assess our streams. And the way they do that a lot of times is through macroinvertebrate sampling. So the bugs in the stream can tell us how healthy a stream might be. So if they're out there doing assessments all around the state, and then they build conclusions off of these bugs that they're seeing, and all of a sudden, one stream one day was, a decent quality stream, and then all of a sudden, it turned into, it was a poor quality stream. It wasn't attaining water quality standards. Now that stream's impaired. Now it has an impaired status. And it takes a ton of work and a lot of money and a lot of work to take a stream from an impaired status and bring it back to a stream that's actually attaining those water quality standards. It's really difficult. And in York and Lancaster counties, down where we're at, it's, you're looking at 80 to 90% of the streams just in Lancaster County are all impaired.
Right.
So
I think it's eye-opening to the average person that living in this area. I think a lot of people don't realize when we hear these things, necessarily how it particularly affects us directly. And that's this campaign, this little bit of time that I've been working on a personal river campaign of my own right now. I know that what I'm really trying to drive for with what I'm making efforts towards is to get the average person to understand how they are intrinsically affecting and also being affected by the issues. So when we can hear stories like you mentioned about the largemouth bass going ill, and sounded like there were die-offs that were minimizing the numbers for people to partake in this like prize fishing sports, right? So when things begin to hit home, when things begin to affect our daily entertainment, our daily comforts, our daily health, those are some really interesting facts that I think we could highlight a little bit if possible. Like, for instance, you mentioned Harrisburg dumping literal sewage, right? And sewage being like human excrement, I'm assuming, correct?
Right.
Into the water around here? Like, that's terrible. Like, I don't even want to know. I do want to know, but like, I can't even begin to think about the ramifications of that. Cause like, I can't even have my son, for example, swimming in this water when he should be allowed to swim in his home waters to connect with the land around him, but he can't because of there being shit in the water.
Yeah.
So, excuse my French. Like, what makes it okay for that to be allowed? And I know that that's some of the stuff that you guys are working on, right? To like bring awareness to this type of pollution and how it should be okay, and how to actually, why is it okay? And how can we be part of that awareness issue?
Well, one, I mean, it's not okay. No,
right,
none of it's
people
okay.
are doing it.
In Harrisburg, those are direct violations of the Clean Water Act. For them to dump raw sewage into the river They are not attaining water quality standards. So those are direct violations. Now, I'll bring up 8 specific points about, how and why it is how we got here. Why are we in such a crisis? People can agree or disagree. These are just my own personal opinions. But, we have corporate greed and legislative affairs that essentially strip away or attack our rights to clean water. We've seen rollback after rollback after rollback through a previous presidential administration, and also right now through the Supreme Court in a recent ruling that we've just seen in the last 2 months. We also see, lack of funding for clean water and for the environment in general. We see lack of enforcement, lack of oversight. We see lack of political will on the local, state, and federal level. We see overdevelopment all over the place. Everyone is up in arms about all these warehouses and all these. Overdevelopment's happening everywhere. We're fighting an overdevelopment, an issue right now where they want to put in, high density residential housing in an area where it's a super critical water resource area. Overpopulation. We are an overpopulated country. Hands down. And so are many others, but that's an issue. That's only going to get worse. More people means more resources, more wastewater management, and more people to operate. And that's my next point, is lack of trained personnel. If you look at the wastewater industry as a whole, we don't have the same kind of operators and the same kind of guys and gals that used to run these plants 50 years ago. They're long gone. They're all retiring. Where are they at? So how do we bring in more trained people? How do we entice the younger generation to get involved and to be part of the solution? That's one way. If you want to go to college, you can go to college, sure. Maybe if you don't want to go to college, there's a lot of jobs in the industry right now, and we need them. We need people to fill those roles, because a lot of people are leaving and retiring, and it's going to become an issue. And then lastly is human behaviors. We cause a lot of pollution on our own. It's not just industry and corporations, it's us unnecessarily. So how do we change our behaviors? And to go into how can we be part of the solution? There's a lot of ways, and Elena, chime in here if you want, because with Elena being a board member and being involved in this, she knows some of the things that we're doing on the side to get people involved. Elena, if you want to touch on them just a little bit, and then I can chime in with a couple others.
Oh, can you guys hear her? Elena, take your.
Sorry.
There you
Our
go.
volunteer John Naylor organized the plastic purge, where he was raising money for every piece of plastic that he could remove from the river. He also did one with tires. That big tire pick was epic. It was so good to see everybody put in the hard work and remove those tires and all the plastic that's been removed. But it's crazy how much litter is along the banks in some parks where you could walk around and enjoy nature, and it's kind of gross when it's filled with plastic and junk. And it could be anything from helmets and flippers to just plastic bottle caps. And those little human behaviors are definitely easier to prevent. Is a matter of integrity to not let that stuff happen. And just sweep the curb in front of your doorway to your home makes a world of difference if everybody would have that mindset, for sure.
Yeah,
but it's been great to see the hard work that we have seen these volunteers picking up plastic and doing cleanups.
And we've had a lot of people out there doing that. That's the one thing I'd say is there's a couple, but the first thing is, people just got to get involved. But getting involved means asking questions, right? Doing what we're doing right now, laying it out there. Attending this is getting involved. watching the recording for this is getting involved. It's that simple. And then, understanding a little bit about what's going on is getting involved. Taking it a step further is dissecting that information, digesting that information, and maybe raising a question. Why? What? How? And going from there. Secondly, speaking up. Once you find out something, and if it doesn't sit well with you, speak up. We have the rights to express our First Amendment's right to speak up. And, if something's amiss or something's wrong, you see something, you say something, right? If someone's out there and they see pollution and, it doesn't smell right, doesn't look right, you have a riverkeeper. You can call your riverkeeper. You can call the state. That's why we're here, is to be the watchdog and to, respond to those types of instances. Taking action. You can call your own legislator on the phone. You can call them. You can raise issues to them. You can sign our action alerts that does the same thing. You can go to a rally. You can join us in, some of the promotional items that we have through social media, sharing our stuff. Sharing our stuff is taking action. If we have a post out there, about a really important topic or issue, and you share that, and then your network sees it, well, guess what? You just helped us out tremendously by allowing a totally different, audience see what we're doing. It's that simple. Changing behaviors. Elena just touched on it. She said, we have a plastic problem. She's absolutely right. Stop buying single-use plastics. Just do it. We don't need to drink water out of a plastic bottle. You don't. There's a lot of companies out there that are selling it either in a paper carton or in an aluminum can. Buy the aluminum can. There's nothing wrong with that. You can recycle that. Aluminum gets recycled 99% of the time. Our plastic is being recycled, like our nation's plastic, like 9% of it is being recycled. So it's the smart choice to just ditch it and ditch them altogether. And it's hard, it might be hard to do it first, but so are a lot of other things that we all do and get over. And so just do it. That's my advice.
You bring a lot of good point. Oh, I'm sorry.
And the last one, this is the last one. Donate. Give your money. That's all you have to do. Our organization runs on a shoestring budget, but we take on the biggest, baddest issues in our watershed, and we literally have a couple people doing it. And it's insane the amount of work that we get done, but we need money and we need staff and we need resources and, a ton of things to make this, to keep doing this work. So that's the last thing I would say. And we're not the only organization out there. There's a bunch of others that are doing excellent work. I'll be biased and say we do really good work too. But there are a ton of people out there doing this, man. And, you can get involved so many different ways. If it's with us, if it's somebody else, but, look around.
One of the things that, by the way, I did include the donation page to the Lower Susquehanna Riverkeeper website. So that's in the chat plug over here on our chat for this particular session. And then we'll plug that into other places we'll share this to. But one of the things since about a year and a half ago, I've been plugged into your emailing list. And I've tried to make it out to some of your official river cleanups, because like Lux was trying to do some river cleanups in the local area where I was taking my toddler out and we were just cleaning up trash, right? Teaching him how to be like aware of his environment with the trash around him. And we were doing that. And then Kendra Hoffman pushed your organization my way because she saw me doing some river cleanups of my own. And I didn't even know you guys existed until she was like, that's great that you're doing that, but there's also this organization that's doing like larger pools than you. And as a very busy mother, I was like, oh, thank God, there's somebody else doing more. There's somebody else doing this. And so like, I started to like seek you guys out a bit to like bring him to your cleanups, because then I don't have to worry about posting a cleanup on Lux. It's like, I mean, I could do that and I will do that, but what I'm like, the more the merrier. Like I went to your group cleanup in the Conestoga. And I got there like an hour late because my toddler was pushing me that morning in a way that made me very late. So I'm bringing that up only to say that I think a lot of people have similar lives as me, is where we want to get there. We want to be aware and we want to be doing that. And then not always will life make it very easy for us to be that active participant like we want to be. So what I've really enjoyed about interacting with your mailing list and different things, and then when I became of different donation drives that you were doing, like Give Local York, is it gave me an opportunity to be my mother self in my home, where it's easier for me to manage my 3-year-old, right? 3-year-old. And I can be still active like I want to be. Maybe I'm not out there able to make the cleanup on time, but I can give whatever money I can to a drive that you're doing, or I can be following the petitions that you guys put out sometimes in your emails, like let's all have our name as a signature, a digital signature that you can simply add by clicking a link that you're sharing in your emailing list, saying you don't need to do anything but just say add me to the list, and like you become a digital signature voice to what the local officials, right? You guys go to actually Capitol Hill and Harrisburg, right? And work with the actual politics of this to do certain reforms. And what kind of stuff? So yeah, I will just put a plug in for your email address, but what kind of stuff are you guys working on politically with Harrisburg and the state capitol, and how far does that reach go? And what are some of the really important messages on that drive?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton there to unravel, but basically, one of the pieces to this whole puzzle is funding. The city of Harrisburg is a poorer city. Generating the amount of funding that's needed to fix this problem and get it done, it's not going to come from the ratepayers and the people that live in Harrisburg. It's just not going to happen. So who's going to pay for it? Capital Region Water, the water authority, they put out the stormwater fees. So now residents and churches and nonprofits and businesses and the state should all be paying these stormwater fees, except the state is not. So the state has decided that these stormwater fees, which everyone else is paying, it's a tax. And since the state doesn't pay taxes, the state doesn't have to pay these fees. And it's a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
But it's happening all around the state, and it's not just Harrisburg. Other places in the state where the state has property and where they're being assessed a stormwater fee, they're not paying those either. But Harrisburg, the state owns 40% of the real estate in Harrisburg. They are being charged in a stormwater fee over $380,000 per year. That's over $30,000 per month that Capital Region Water should be getting from the state to help fix these problems, but they're not getting it. So what we did last year to help raise that issue and to get some more voices around it was, a cry to help to our legislature. So we had an action alert out there last year, which was a form of an email or a letter that was directed towards, depending upon where you lived, it would be directed to your representative or your legislator. And it basically said, hey, we have these serious issues that are causing, catastrophic water quality concerns for the Susquehanna River. We need to address this. Like, the state has to be paying this money. And then we had hundreds of these letters go out. I mean, over 600 or 700 letters went out, I believe. Senator DeSanto, who is in Perry County, Dauphin County, he got the most, right? Naturally, the way it worked out is he got the most. The senator in Harrisburg, he got the most. Good, thank God, because directly after that, we had saw within a month after all those letters were after they kind of died down, he got about 110 or so of those letters. He introduced legislation in October of 2021 or two. I'm sorry, last year. Yeah, 2022. He introduced legislation requiring the state to pay those stormwater fees. And so like what we did worked, right? We had a legislator stand up. I think we can pat ourselves on the back a little bit, and everyone else who took action. So, but what happened now? So the state is still not paying those stormwater fees. Apparently there was some court case around the Westchester area that's now being appealed, and hopefully there's some movement. I'm not totally involved there right now. But that was a huge move for his office to take. But hopefully we'll see some more legislation come out, or some kind of repeal or a reverse of whatever court decision just happened. So we'll see on that. But the other issues that we have around there is the state's responsibility. In addition to just paying those stormwater fees, the state, it's the capital of the state. Virginia, on the other hand, for example, their state legislature approved tens of millions of dollars to go directly towards cleaning up their state capital and other cities that have combined sewer overflow. Other states and their legislatures, they're approving funding and they're putting it into their budgets so they can fix water quality concerns like combined sewer overflow. Is our state legislature doing that? No.
Do you feel like they might be getting the message? Like, is this pressure being put on enough?
No, it's not, because we have limited capacity as an organization. I have limited capacity in my role, and we need help, right? We need resources. I need money, staff, and time to really make a huge dent in pushing a lot of these issues forward. But I'm not going to complain about it, because we do, we're doing a pretty good job. But yeah, I mean, we could always put more attention and more, backing behind any issue we're working on. Harrisburg specifically. I mean, that's one that's got to piss every single person off in this entire state, and anyone who visits our state. You got a capital that's, they're discharging hundreds and hundreds of millions of gallons of untreated wastewater combined with stormwater, sure, into the river every year. And the results that we just got back from our last, and I've been monitoring the bacteria levels for the last 5 years, and every year they haven't gotten better. In fact, this year I think has been one of the worst ones yet. So, there's huge concerns there. So what do we have to do? We have to pressure our state legislature to take clean water, and they have to invest into clean water.
Right. And is that the
invest in the state capital? And they have to realize that they're part of the problem. I'm sorry, but if you're coming from Pittsburgh and you're a legislator and you're coming to that state capital, and if it's raining and you take a shit in that toilet, you're part of the problem. So you can't say that, oh, because my constituents are in this area, that it's not my problem. Sure it is.
It's everybody's problem.
It's everybody's problem. That's right.
Nick, Elena, Shell, thank you for coming on. Does anybody have anything? Any questions or?
I can say I'm grateful for that opportunity I had this summer and 3 summers ago when testing the Susquehanna River for E. coli. It was, I got to be by the water, scooped up a little bit of river water at 10 different locations 3 times this summer and brought it over to the lab. I don't know if the results got published. Did you publish the results for the summer testing in Harrisburg, Ted?
No, not yet. It'll be sometime later this month or into September. We'll have that done.
Okay, because people are curious. And I had one curious bystander come and ask me about what I was doing. And I got to talk about what I was doing. And I was testing at the last site at the boat launch in Steelton, which is a beautiful area. And they were like, oh, I was just swimming here and you're testing it for E. coli. But we had a great conversation. So that was enriching. And it's been great to see the Water Watchdogs information about the Lake Clark area. So thank you for publishing those results.
Yeah, and Rachel, I mean, we have a lot of citizen scientist style type, programs that we're running right now. The
Right.
one that Elena just mentioned, Water Watchdogs. We're going to be expanding that next year to bring in some more volunteers, people that are passionate about water quality and sampling, and we have a couple others. We do have a smallmouth bass monitoring program. We have a microplastics monitoring program. We have a stream team program, which is looking at pH, temperature, conductivity, and nitrates of many different tributaries to the Susquehanna. That's in partnership with Dickinson College and the Alarm program. We have a cleanup program. Obviously, you know about that. We're cleaning up, creeks in the river throughout the year. But there's just a ton going on, and there's a lot of ways to get involved. Not just through an action alert or signing a petition or letting your voice be heard, but joining us, physically at in some of these programs and
being an example. So from a mother's perspective, I am strategically trying to involve my son in activities that will just be like naturally exposing him to being the solution through like when we go for walks around my neighborhood, for example, we bring trash bags to collect trash if we see it, and he's able to actually identify trash now on the road where it shouldn't be and belong. And so he's naturally becoming ingrained in these types of patterns and behaviors. And so as I'm hearing you talking about all the things that you guys are offering, I'm wondering if there's anywhere that you offer like toddler type of experiences that are focusing on a child's perspective and education on this.
Coming soon.
Really?
Maybe very, very soon. Yeah, we're working on something really, really cool. We're working on a really big acquisition, hopefully, and some educational programming that's going to come along with it.
Awesome.
It's pretty cool. So more details and more to come on that. But
I will
yeah,
be watching that.
we will be taking the next step for our educational programming and making it more available for everyone.
I think that is such a crucial part of this is the children are our future. And I know I'm just.
Yeah, Rachel,
Yeah.
so I do that with Quinn. I go by like my neighborhood. I live in Steelton. So like we go and pick up trash all the time, and we I try to make him like be aware that, you need to like take care of your environment and be around you. And so he's learned to like, even when we're out in random places, like if we go to like a park or something, he just starts picking up trash and he's like, where's the bag at? I like love it. I feel like he needs to like have that ingrained in him that, you got to pick up the trash. If you see trash, you should do it. And I also, the only places I let him play in the water is like creeks and stuff. Like I don't really like pools or anything. I feel like he should be in a creek, he should be like having a good time, like in a creek.
Children should be able to live in the water they live around. That's such an important part of being grounded.
Yeah, it's grounding. It's very grounding. Like the chlorine's not good for them. And I mean, you saw, you were at his birthday party and they just love to play in the creek. Kids love it because it's natural. It's like something that, sorry, he's like
thank you for sharing that. I really agree that like the more that we expose our children to experiences that are teaching them awareness, because the biggest issue for everyone right now is ignorance about this. I mean, yeah, there's those shady people that are committing the crimes, knowingly polluting. They shouldn't be doing that. But on this normal end of things, it's like we're not aware of all that till we become aware. And we're not aware of like what certain things are that we're doing that are affecting things so negatively until we become aware. So I think the children growing up in an educated and an environment that's all about awareness, I think it's going to be amazing to see the effect that could have on future generations and the world around us at that time. So anything you guys are focusing on with education for the children? I'll be there with Patrick and promoting you.
Cool.
Thank you. I have the link to the Susquehanna Riverkeeper, Lower Susquehanna Riverkeepers donation page is in the chat box. Anybody, this is going to be recorded and Nick and I are going to work on editing it and then putting it up there so that the link can be shared anywhere. We'll send it over to you guys, Ted and Elena, so that you can circulate it however is helpful for you, and hopefully just plug into a larger audience through continuous sharing and other ways we might be able to work together to help you guys too. So thank you again for coming on
Thank
here.
you.
Everybody else, we still have 5 minutes
thank
if
you.
there's anything else, but
That's great. Thank you.
absolutely. Nick, you feel complete? Do you have any questions from your perspective?
Well, the main takeaways that I got were definitely getting the kids involved, and also just as adults showing your children that when you see a piece of trash on the ground, you pick it up yourself, and that lead by example for your children. And the big thing with like the legislators, like the problem is you're not going to get them to just give you guys money out of the goodness of your heart, because they're, like you said, corporate greed and everything. So you got to find ways to prove to them that they need to funnel money into those projects.
Right.
So then somehow that they can make money off of it, or like shows them ways that it's costing them money. It's sad
Or
that you have
votes, costing them votes.
Nick,
Yeah.
you are
Yeah.
or costing them votes. Like you have to, it's a sad reality that that's just how you have to deal with these people. And you probably are, like, you probably know that. That's just my perspective of what I saw while you guys were talking. I was like, that's something that's the only way to really get what you want out of the legislatures and stuff, is you got to show them reasons for why they should put the money into that. They're not just going to do that. It's a sad reality.
You nailed it on the head. And the economic benefits that come with restoration of water resources is they're there, right? You spend the dollar and protecting our resources, and what you get at an economic benefit. How does the GDP for the state increase by protecting our water resources? Let's figure it out, right?
Yeah, that's what you need to hit them on, and just keep hammering away on that. And eventually someone will see it, or you put a lot of pressure on them, and you piss off a bunch of other legislatures from other areas, and then they can pile on to the main people that you're going after. It sucks having to do that, but brute force is the only thing that they listen to.
Yeah.
And money.
It's hard work. Being an environmental organization that isn't all feel good and greenwashing is a lot of hard work. People want to feel good about themselves by doing cleanups, but really there's a ton of hard work in convincing the bigger entities that have more clout, to really follow through with water quality. And it's not all feel good, but it takes a lot of work, and it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, and
I
the
feel
sad
like they
thing
think
is
we're like
that-
tree huggers or something, and they're not like interested. in,
Right.
like, they're not. You're not making the money or whatever. So
Nonetheless, we
They
want to
don't-
be
they're
able
not
to
interested.
swim and fish and drink our water. And that's
Right.
our main,
Yeah.
one of our main mission statements is to work toward a drinkable, swimmable, fishable Susquehanna River.
I apologize for coming in late. I'm really sorry, but
That's okay. You're
I have a
welcome.
6-year-old
too.
that's a very handful.
Yeah, that's
so-
tough. That's tough too.
Yeah, but I really wanted to like jump on and hear what you had to say. Like, this is interesting to me. It's very interesting. I feel like,
Cool.
you know,
Well, spread the word. Word of
Yeah.
mouth is really powerful in our organization right now at the stages that we're at in our growth. We're still really fledging. So
yeah. Unfortunately,
keep-
like it's
keep
all
us
about
on-
the money. It's all about the dollar, like what they're gonna make. So
true. But the word of mouth power is great for us right now. So keep the Lower Susquehanna Riverkeeper as a household mention as often as you can, guys.
Yeah.
definitely.
We have a Facebook page, Instagram page. The website's got a ton of information. I mean, we are your watchdog.
Can you put that in the notes or whatever? And like,
Well, I put their website plug in, like it's to their donation page, but you can explore their website, and you guys have those social media buttons, right, on your website, right? people can just plug into your social media through there, like the icons.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Cool.
Appreciate you all for being here. And I feel like this was a really powerful subject. So I appreciate these powerful voices. Thank you. Thank you.
We
Love you.
appreciate you guys. Lux Convergence for the win.
Yes.
Thanks so much. This was great. Any other time, let us know. We'll be happy to,
So yeah, I'll be
take
contacting.
the issue and take,
Oh, Nick, I have to like make an appointment with you for sure. Like really
Yeah.
soon. I keep saying I'm going.
Nearby planets, far off suns, but precisely